There it is. And so basically, here's the proposal. This is what I propose. This is not like the truth with a capital T. And consider the possibility. There are 4 aspects to empathy. I'm going to tell you what they are and why they are important. There's openness to the other person. I call it receptivity. So I'm receptive, open to what's going on. And that includes the issues that we came up with: emotions, feelings, sensations, issues, challenges, conflicts, dynamics. There's an aspect of understanding. So I take what I experience and process it further. If I stop at phase 1, something interesting is going to happen. Okay, but for the moment, let's push on. There's an understanding of what's possible for the other person, who they are in the situation that they're in. So we're going counterclockwise. People have expressed and unexpressed commitments. The interesting part comes when I have unexpressed commitments. I like to have a job, but I don't like to work 9 to 5, right? I like aspects of being fully employed are very inspiring. When that paycheck hits the direct deposit, I'm happy for at least 3 days. Nevertheless, there's some truth to that, right? I mean, we don't. So there's an understanding of possibility. I take that understanding, and this is the folk psychology aspect of empathy, right? I take a walk in the other person's shoes. If we were to ask the person on the street, if we went downstairs and started, well, what do you all think it is? Nobody actually came up with that, but it's out there, and I think you'll recognize it. You take a walk in the other person's shoes, right? I mean, and then there's dynamics around that, because is my shoe size the same as yours? Unlikely. It does happen occasionally. It does happen rarely enough. You may have characters, traits, aspects of your personality, likes and dislikes, preferences and lacks of preferences, issues, conflicts, and so on. The list is long. So I'm left speculating. How good a speculator, how good an imagination can I have? And the default position, we'll get to the default position. And finally, I can be perfectly empathic. It's rare. But on a good day, let's say I get there and I really get what you're dealing with, right? And you may or may not know about it, right? It can be, you can express it with a put my arm around your shoulders. It doesn't have to be verbal. It doesn't have to be syntactically, right, articulate in words. It can be body language, nonverbal. I can lean into the conversation. I can demonstrate I really get what you're up to, how you're, and what you're experiencing. Nevertheless, oftentimes we live in a verbal world, and you wouldn't know unless somebody gave you some verbal feedback. And so there's the matter of actual empathic responsiveness. Which is why I like acknowledgement that Dale was referring to earlier. Sometimes it can be as simple as acknowledging what the other person is going through, recognizing what they're dealing with. There are a number of things we can do with each of these 4 aspects of empathy, and I suggest to you that they're present simultaneously and immediately, and that's part of the challenge. We're going to unstring them and look at them sequentially for purposes of communication, for purposes of understanding, for purposes of making explicit what's already there. I might even say for didactic purposes, right? For teaching and training purposes, there's value in unpacking the simultaneous coming at you, total gestalt, total configuration moment. Let's pause for a moment for questions and feedback on this proposed definition. But what do you think?
So I think what Linda says is true to a point, because I'm going to share something personal. My niece has been diagnosed with not having empathy. And it is very difficult. So this week, that's the reason why I'm so exhausted, is I've had to be in the middle of 2 girls who are the same age, who one is extremely empathetic and one who has no empathy at all, having them relate to each other and how to interpret and explain to each other, because my niece, it's very difficult. She has no concept of empathy whatsoever. And she has to learn to be in the other person's shoes from her actions and be held accountable. And it's very exhausting. And, you know, I love my niece dearly, but it's very exhaustive. And, you know, and then I feel bad because after a while she gets it, and then she feels extremely bad, and then she's heartbroken because someone's mad at her. But if it's not corrected when they're young, when they get older, and you work in an environment where someone who has no empathy, it makes it a very hostile work environment.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to work with her now so she understands what it means to be in the other person's shoes from her actions. But then it was also very strenuous having to work with Tenzie's very sensitive, and she doesn't understand why she does those things. So I had to explain to her what she's feeling and then say, okay, can you imagine not feeling that at all?
Yeah.
And it's very hard because, especially when you're explaining to kids, because kids are like, well, why is she like that?
Well, thank you for blowing up this talk.
Yeah.
And I'm only partially kidding because
Yeah.
this is brilliant. I mean, I'm gonna say in 2 sentences what you so eloquently said. There are issues, one might say disorders of empathy, where an individual, for whatever reason, is not as empathic. I'm gonna draw the normal distribution, right? This is a perfect time. I mean, I can erase this and draw the normal distribution. And what you've just described, Cynthia, is an individual who's more towards the skinny edge of that distribution. Most of us are in the middle. And, you know, I would, and not to split hairs with what you said, which was so powerful and eloquent, and you said, first you said she didn't have empathy, and then, and then later she gets it and feels remorse.
She feels remorse, but if I didn't explain it to her,
Yeah.
if I don't sit down
Yeah.
with her, I have to take her away from the situation,
Yeah.
and I literally have to go step by step.
Yeah.
And it's a long process. It takes me about a half hour to go
Yeah,
through
right.
with
So
her.
it's empathy. I mean, it's not she's. So I mean, I
She's
wish
not
to make the
pro-
point.
she's-
I
yeah, she's
actually
not
wish to make the
processing it.
point, right? That it's an outlier, so to speak, to use that language, and yet there is a capability there which may be developed, and it's effort. I mean, the bar is moved up here. It's not just an easy correction. The bar is higher, and that's being a parent or in a parental role or being a grown-up, if you will, amidst children is really challenging, and so. But I mean, we're going to talk more about this, but I wish to make the point, there are disorders of empathy, and, labeling people is, like, interesting and has its uses. Heavens knows, we could do the Myers-Briggs, remember, it's kind of popular around here. Get a couple of labels, right? Okay, you know my take on it, okay? But I am skeptical, if I may say so, that is one of the things that but sometimes we have to do it, because we have to communicate. And we do it with conditions and qualifications that we've got an issue and we're trying to define an issue. So with all the necessary qualifications and disclaimers, yeah, we can go there. Where to go next? Thank you for that. I see Elizabeth has a hand, and I did invite feedback. So notice, when you ask for feedback, you will get it. This is good. This is good. It's working.
Actually, I was going to jump off both of your points,
Yeah.
because you're saying when you have deep relationships and you are in good relationships, all this is already there. So you're not even conscious of the pieces that are in there. While with your nieces, one is there and the other doesn't even know where the forest is.
Exactly.
So I think it looks like that methodology diagram you have there might be then the way to see is what is working where and what are things missing for the other, so it can become a more informed intervention.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure I can give it back to you succinctly, other than what you said, that it's already there. And you said something then nice about the diagram, so I also acknowledge it. Thank you for that. That it may be useful. I get that it's useful. And so here's the point about that. Maybe I can try to take it up a level. The myth, if there's a myth, it's that we are unrelated. That's a myth. We are all related. And that is a powerful lesson. You know that coworker who really gets me? I mean, I don't really know her or him very well. I'm making this up now, but I've been there, and I think most everybody has who's ever worked a job in an office, right? That coworker who really gets me, and sometimes it's a boss and sometimes it's a subordinate. It's 360 degrees. I'm related to them, most intimately. And it's something, I mean, that's a kind of a management principle. People who don't get along should be required to work together. Sometimes that works and sometimes it works less well, provided that people are respectful of boundaries. I want to say that a lot of work on empathy is about respecting boundaries, navigating boundaries, traversing boundaries between self and other while maintaining a boundary. So once somebody uses devaluing language, once you get those kinds of issues that often, for better or worse, percolate up to HR, sometimes with good reason, sometimes, you know, it's like human people being people, then you've got boundary issues and more even, here's what I want to say by way of intro. But before we turn to the next slide and how empathy breaks down, because we're already talking about that, we're gonna connect that to the job, career situation. Bada bee, bada bang, bada bing. And before we do that, you want to see how people have brought up situations where empathy is being tested, right? Whether it's a disorder of empathy, which might actually be diagnosable and require professional intervention, and certainly requires or is a challenge to parenting. Because the child, the young person, brings up my own fate as a child. I had a great childhood. I had my struggles too. There were some struggles, there was some stuff, right? Which I'm not actually going to go into that right now. But when I meet a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old, what comes up is where was I at as a 5-year-old? And that's why going inward can increase my outward empathy. Roger, what do you think?
Just a quick thought, and this may not be the right time to address it, but I'd be very curious to hear about the skepticism you have of labels.
Yeah.
Just kind of...
Well, I'll try and say more about that.
And that could be later if you want to jump into something else.
It actually is later. I mean, I'm going to give you the short version now.
Okay, thank you.
One proposal, which is why we have to come back to this, because it opens up another debate within a debate within a debate. It goes on for a while. To train empathy may be useful. It's not the only method. It is useful to identify and remove the obstacles to empathy. And then empathy naturally shows up on a good day. You see why I say on a good day, because it's no guarantee. So that's why sometimes labels can be limiting. They're a constraint. They can be, if they give me access to an issue, well, okay, oftentimes a label shuts down a possibility, it shuts down a conversation. I know you, you know what you're like. Remember that one? Let me tell you about you. How do you think that's going to go?
Not well.
Not well. Thank you. Let me tell you, right, because it's going to be a judgment and an evaluation, in short, a label.
Stick.
It's going to be a long label if it's a description. So, hence the skepticism. I mean, and we do have labels in a way. So the recommendation is, as you hear the voiceover, distinguish it. I suggest to you that you can't actually make it stop. There's no way to make it. If you work on it, you can shrink it sometimes. You can make it smaller and less forceful. You can make it less powerful. You can make it less intrusive. But it doesn't really ever completely go away. So, I mean, and that's the human design defect, if you will, that we're judging and evaluating to survive. And survive doesn't mean get the job. Survive doesn't mean flourish. To get the job, I have to contribute. I have to demonstrate I'm a contributor. That's my take on it. I mean, it's not the truth with a capital T, but consider the possibility. That's what advances me, takes the interview up a level, really gets them, yeah, we want to get this guy or man or woman down here, and maybe we need to give them an extra whatever, XYZ grand. So I wish to express my appreciation for the opportunity to do this. I think there's a lot more to be said. I'm going to hang around a while longer, and I want to give you a chance to, any final thoughts? You got to fill out the evaluation, ladies and gentlemen. You got to.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.